Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and this one I'm really excited about because I have the Lotus Emira first edition in the garage and I've had it for a few days. The first chance to drive this car that I saw up at Heffel for the world reveal on the 6th of July last year, so just 11 months ago. And here it is in the garage. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, there are two versions of Emira. There's the i4, the four-cylinder AMG engine one with dual clutch transmission, or the V6, which has either a manual transmission or an auto 6-speed gearbox. You choose which one you want. This one is the V6 manual with sports packs, so sport suspension. There is a Tour pack as well, and we'll come to that later because I have also had a chance to drive the Tour back to back with this sport edition on the same bit of road. And this one, the V6, is priced at $75,995. The AMG four-cylinder engine version isn't out yet. We haven't had a chance to drive it, but you can order it. And the first editions of that one is $71,995. I looked at the website just before coming up here, and they're still saying the four-cylinder version of the Emira starts at $59,995. We haven't seen that. It won't be available until 2023, but that is an amazing start price for this car that I think looks terrific. Now let's go and have a closer look and see all the details on this new Lotus. Now I'm just going to discuss the size of this car. I think it's important to get the positioning of where this car sits in the market. It's a bigger car than the Alpine A110, for example, but it's almost identical in a number of key areas to the Porsche Cayman GTS 4 litre, which I think is its closest rival. The one area where it's bigger is wider tracked. It's both wider in body and in track. So this is 2047 width as against 1994 for the Cayman GTS, but it's a good looking car. This is the new look of Lotus, as these strange cutouts here. It all feeds a radiator that you can see down there. It's angled back and then it vents through here. You think you could open this, but you can't. There's no access to the front there. Then if you come round the side, this car actually sits on 20-inch wheels, and this car, being a sport pack, has the optional Michelin Cup 2 tyres. The other tyre available is a Goodyear F1 tyre, and I've also driven this car on the Goodyears as well as these Michelin Cup 2. This is the most extreme version, if you like, this example here. Come down. Now, when you spec your car, you can choose whether to have a black roof up here, black rails, black roof, or body colour, and the same with lower pack. That black vent here, when I actually looked at it, it's actually venting into the back wheel. And the other thing to note, I always think on Lotus, you might think, oh, why don't they, sits quite high. That is a Lotus trait. They always have a lot of suspension movement. It's just how they set the cars up. So I think it's a good thing for mainly road use. No carbon brakes available at the moment on this car, but super big brakes and 20-inch front and rear wheels. Fronts are tyres are 245, 35, 20, and the rears are 295, 30, 20 tyres. Quick look inside. We'll see it better when we go for a drive, but that is the big change on this car, even down to the doors. You never even got armrests on the Evora until they introduced the sort of GT version right at the end, and there was no storage. Here I've got, pockets there. I've got 12-way electric seats. I've got that TFT screen in the middle. This being a manual, there's very obvious gear change there and all exposed mechanism underneath. It's completely different to Evora and brings Lotus bang up to date. Other things on the options, I'm surprised you can get privacy glass for this tiny little window. Hardly sees any point. This is the badge telling you first edition, so the one there, Emira, really nice. Silly little detail I like, but if I flick the petrol cap, there's no actual filler thing. You fill straight up. I don't know why more cars don't have that. It seems the obvious thing to do. Come round the back though, and here things get really serious. The last Evora I had in the garage had a central exhaust. Now it's twin exhaust. There's a hint of a lease, I suppose, of the design on this thing, with a Venturi coming up, Lotus across the back. But that wide start, it just looks very modern. And then back here, you get a boot here. You also get quite a big space behind the front seats, which is really useful. This is actually your battery cover. There's a normal battery in there. I checked because the last Evora I had in had a lithium battery. This is a conventional battery. And then the supercharged V6. Toyota engine base, and then Lotus supercharger on, charged cooled, and 400 horsepower in this example, 420 Newton meters of torque. Weirdly, if you get the automatic gearbox, it goes to 430 Newton meters of torque. I mean, a great engine, revs out, you'll see when we drive, it gives this car real character, this engine. So, there you go, there's a quick run around the car. Let's take it outside, take it for a drive. Now, before I get in, there's just a couple of things I want to show you. One, the useful storage space behind the seats. That's dead easy to access. Side of the seat tips down like that. I can chuck things back there. I can put proper size bags there, briefcases, whatever. And then, lots of people say, oh, you can't get into the Evora, what's it like in the Emira? Here is me getting into an Emira. There we are. What's really nice is the seat isn't a torture device, so there's no hard edges, and you get out again. It is a piece of cake. It is a non-issue now, getting in and out of your new Lotus. Now, some things just to take in when you get in here. First, the really modern interior. Two, the steering wheel goes up, down, in and out, all over the place. And it's quite critical where you have it, because you want to be able to see the dash, because the revs are along the top line, so you can just line it up. It's perfectly shaped, the steering wheel, for that. I'm going to start the car because we've got a very odd day in the UK. It's really warm. It's saying it's 30 degrees or 31. It's just clicked up, but it's not. But I just want to get the air conditioning up and running. Yeah, modern steering wheel, everything. You just don't think you're sitting in a Lotus. You need the badge to tell you. It's been so long since you've had a really up-to-date interior like this. Storage everywhere. Say, in the doors, cup holders there, and then there's one here as well, bin here. And I discovered the other day, it's even got a glove box. Like, it's so hidden, and the switch is under here. I didn't notice it's got a sort of reasonable-sized glove box. On the steering wheel itself, I've got cruise control and things here, and then this thing sort of controls things on the dash. Now, unfortunately, I hoped this was going to be a 100% production car, but it's not. It's just not quite full production, and that's got software 5.6 when it should have 6. So I get a SRS service urgent message, which is all a bit nonsense, but I have to click it and I have an airbag warning light. Well, that's just part of it, pre-production, etc. And thinking how much trouble there's been going on in the world. If that's the only issue, that's not too bad. Lovely vents, all with little Emira on them. Great view out, you'll see. Oh, pumping beautiful cold air in, and all controllable down here. Drive modes have come to that, radio, etc. I can just turn it on with this button here. There it goes, or off, volume, etc. And I say the starter hides underneath this red warning thing here. And there's a gearbox. Plenty of space behind, engine tucked away, no nonsense rear seats, just a sort of luggage area. Anyway, let's get going. First thing you notice, actually, heavier clutch than you're expecting, and a sort of relatively heavy gear change. It's not heavy, but it's snappy, it's short throw, but the clutch weighting is on the heavier side than you might expect with a Toyota engine. There it are, it's locked, and off we go. First drive in the Emira, finally. Anyway, I'll do my usual thing, head out, and you'll join me in a moment on a better road. Right, over here. Off we go. You soon get to feel that supercharged power. 3.5 litre V6 engine before supercharging means it's quite grunty from the off. I've got it in Tour at the moment, so this is its default setting, which is its quieter zone. It is a little quieter than I expected on the exhaust sound, but that's a sort of good thing, because I did measure it on this bit of road. I always do the test cars, and it came out at 78 decibels, which is quite a lot. And I'll have something else to say on that in a moment, but it is on cut tube tyres, it is the sport setting, and it's a Lotus. So it's not going to be the quietest car in the world in the first place, and that is below current Porsche settings, which quite often in the 80 decibel mark. Now, I quite also like, I just had it up before, there we are, tyres, It's the only car I know that displays tyre pressures to 100th of a bar. There's no sort of 2.1 bar, it's 2.03 bar. But I suppose that's what you expect from Lotus, 2.03 and 2.08. It shows how finicky they are on the detail in the chassis department, the dynamics department. They need to have tyre pressures to 2 decimal points. Other things I've noticed just as I pull away, you can just feel the bumps coming through. This is a very, focused car, shall we say. Steering is just a delight, super sharp. I mean, I'm just going through Burford at the moment, but it's hydraulic system. But there is immediately, you're in something that's dynamically pretty special. There's 3 modes you can go in. That's all accessed by these driver modes here. So if I touch it, it brings it up. Tour is the first one. Powertrain is relaxed, exhaust, stability. I'm going to choose Sport. There is track beyond it. This is how you actually turn the traction control off on that screen as well. But key on it, it doesn't actually adjust the dampers. The dampers are fixed, and the different rates depending if you went for the Tour, tick the Tour box or the Sport box when you order the car. Right, here we go. This is going to be the squirt up the hill. I'm actually going to go down to second actually. So it's quite short geared, and this is a really good thing because you get to enjoy the revs, and it's an engine worth stretching. So here's the D limit sign. Here we go. There we are. There we are. You see the change up lights come on the dash, and off you go. Yeah, it's a linear power as you would expect from the supercharger, and it just builds. It's one of those engines that's definitely worth revving out, and it's lovely that it's not turbocharged. There isn't this instant wallop of torque down below, and then it just completely linear building of power and torque right up to the 6,800 RPM cut-off, which is all good. Try it away from here. Standing start. Just a bundle of energy. Now this is my bumpy bit of road, and it's quite busy down here. The steering is super sharp though. It's not quite floating over the bumps as I would expect. But this is, as I say, the Sport setup with those Cup 2 tyres. And it's actually, when this car first arrived a few days ago, I took it down this bit of road, and I have to say I was confused. It says Lotus. I was expecting to have this bump absorption and to actually ride out these smaller bumps, but no, it was quite aggressive. It is quite close to the ride. I'll describe it as something like the GR Yaris with circuit pack. It's not as hard as a Porsche GT3, but it's up there. So I gave Lotus a call. I said, is this just because of the Cup 2s? And they said, no, it's very different between touring and sport. And they very kindly, one of their dynamic guys, William Copland, jumped in the car the next morning at silly o'clock, arrived here around 9 o'clock, and I had both cars here and took them down this bit of road and could compare the two. So what I'm going to do now is we swapped over cars. You're going to join me now on that exact same bit of road in the Evora, identical, but with Tour pack rather than Sports pack. This is what I discovered. It's completely different. It now floats over the bumps like I expect a Lotus to. It's still firm, it's still very sporting, steering is chattering away, but I haven't got that harshness. I've just got this breathing with the road, floats, and I can just attack the B road without any annoying sort of aggressive sort of bump rebound. about, just all in the damping. I'm very surprised the spring rates are so close. It's amazing. Look at that steering torque. And modern cars don't do that. It's amazing. Pure Lotus. So there you go. Tour is a very different car to Sporting, and to me much more what I expected from Lotus. And the other surprise, it was much quieter. It was 74 decibels on the same bit of road where this car was 78. Anyway, let's try it through here on these bumps. But yeah, as ever, it's the amount of suspension travel just completely dismissed that compression there, because it's not sort of lowered right down. The turn into here is just spectacular. Now I can't upset the grip on this car with Cup 2 cars. There's negative camber coming out of that corner, doesn't notice it. That bit is pure Lotus, but that Tour does add that usability. I spoke to Gavin Kershaw about it after driving the pair of the cars together, and it was really interesting what he said. I said, what's the difference between the two? He says the spring rates are within 5% of each other. Very close on spring rates, but it's the damping. The damping is a stiffer setup on the sport setting, and on the Tour you've got slightly more travel at the back, and the slightly different geo when you put the Cup 2 tyres on to maximise the advantages of the Cup 2 more aggressive tyres, more negative, and actually tow out, which surprised me. I said, well, surely if it's just damping, couldn't you go for adaptive dampers and have a Tour and a sport setting? He says, no, not if it's a true Lotus. Adaptive damping isn't good enough. The quality of damping you get from a Bilstein that is one setting, a passive setting, so they are sticking with passive setting, and it's something to be aware of when you're ordering. If you are using the car mainly for road and for the old track day, tick Tour. If you want a more aggressive setup and you want a really special car every time you use it on a Sunday or you're doing track days, tick Sport. But be aware there's quite a difference between the two. Anyway, so that was really useful to discover that and to drive them back to back on the same bit of road. Now, what else about this car? I think I ought to start going through some of the likes and dislikes, I think, with this car. I suppose one of the slight dislikes, which is a bit of a weird one, is it's heavier than I expected. I have no idea why it is. It's got aluminium structure. I went round with a magnet, there's no steel bodywork on it, and yet it matches the Cayman, that's a steel bodied car with a flat 6 engine. This car is probably about 1460 kilos or thereabouts with a V6. They say 1405 for the lightest version, which will be for the 4-cylinder. I'm going to break off here. Oh, and the way it revs when you touch the accelerator, I just love as well. And the power out, that was full power. Takes traction is off the scale. Yes, sorry, I meant to be on the dislikes, aren't I? So yeah, the weight, it just slightly blunts the performance. It's 4 point something to 60, but it's a super stiff structure. I'm just surprised it's not lighter than it actually is when you put it on the scales. The thing also about the 4-cylinder engine, that comes with a dual clutch transmission, so they're heavy. So the actual weight between the two cars is about 54 kilos. You'd expect you might gain more with a 4-cylinder engine versus the V6 supercharged. There's something else I find slightly odd with this car. It almost feels as though it could have come out 5 years ago. This doesn't sort of move on, doesn't have any new tech on it. It's a Vora with a wonderful interior, wider tracks, more dynamics, better finished, but it hasn't got anything that's super modern on it. It's not a criticism, it's just an observation. And actually, I really love it, because I've always wanted to own a Lotus, but there's always been a but on the interior. That's gone away with this edition. The final sort of dislike, it doesn't sound quite as good as that Evora I had in, which was spectacular, But I guess that's the trouble with gas particulate filters and modern regulations. They have slightly strangled the sound of this screaming V6 behind me. Now moving on to the likes. Now there's loads of these, much easier to discuss. Number one, looks. I just see it outside the house, I see it in the garage, see it amongst the collection, and I just love it. It's the Lotus I've always wanted. And it looks modern and fresh, and it's a different take, and it's instantly recognisable as a Lotus. Absolutely terrific. And then you get in it, and you think, this is it. This is what I've wanted. The price point, everything works. The livability. I've had this for a few days, and it's great. Air conditioning seems to work really well. I can. It's quieter than I expected. The visibility out is good, and in that tour spec, the ride is fantastic. I think the only thing I've noticed, but this is left-hand drive, just coming out of junctions, you're slightly limited. That little window at the side there is almost invisible, especially if you've got a passenger in the car, and there's a pretty tiny rear view out the rear mirror, but then you get to see the top of the engine and that funny valve doing its thing. So I just love the packaging and everything about the looks and interior. Then the performance, I love the level performance and its sort of vitality. It's just this wild thing, but it's not too quick. It is 4.7 to 60. It's still 180 miles an hour, but the way the engine revs, the way you're using this gear lever, you're involved, and it's just ace. After all the sort of paddle shift, high 600-700 horsepower cars that you're just worried about your license, there's a joyous delivery of performance in this car that is absolutely in the sweet spot. It's a great level performance, feels plenty quick enough. Listen to that. I cannot get over the traction. I know I'm on cut twos, but what about there? So yeah, there you go. It's been worth the wait. That's what I would say about this car. It's finally the Lotus, with no excuses, competing head-on with the other sports car out there, and doing what Lotus always did best back in the earliest Spree days. Here was this offering for the UK British car that competed with Porsche and Ferrari and a certain extent and Lamborghini, but at a different price point. It's the everyman's McLaren, if you like, and I think the pricing is really clever at £76,000, because the Evora was overpriced. It was always in the 80s and £90,000. It was just too much for the compromised interior. All that is gone. No wonder there's a 2-year wait for this car, because it absolutely delivers what you want from a new Lotus sports car. No more excuses. Lotus are back. I've got a Emira coming. Now I've driven it. I am overjoyed with it. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming on very soon.